This is the GPL podcast, part of the Pull Tab Sports family.
Oh boy. Jupe making mistakes. I love it. The over-under for this game, it's 7.
Over.
Which is a big number.
Hammer. Where's the hammer? Hammer the over.
Hammer the over.
Freddie, let's go to Cabela's.
Take that, you stinking badgers!
Now, here's Jupiter and Vigo. Good evening and welcome to the GPL podcast, episode number 292. Viggs, there he is. How you doing tonight?
Great. You brought the A game with that opener. Holy smokes. What a good one. Much better than the Gopher performance on the ice this last weekend.
Oh, it is.
Way to change your best.
Yeah, you got to do what you got to do. Ugh. I got a good one coming up for Dan Woog in about a month or so that'll be fun as well. Viggs, we've been trying to push our YouTube channel a lot lately. We've been doing video on the podcast for 5 years now, since kind of the COVID thing around that time. But we still have the audio podcast, but the video is really where we've been getting more into doing more clips. Obviously, we've been doing post-game videos for quite a while. So we're just trying to push content. So if you're watching live on Twitter right now, go over to our YouTube page. You can watch us live there. You can comment while we're doing the show live here on Tuesday night, and subscribe to our channel, Viggs. We're just trying to push more people towards our channel.
One of the funnest thing about our little podcast we have going here is our community. When I'm at the rink and people say hi, that's awesome. Hey, if you're one of those people that really support us, subscribe to the channel. It helps us quite a bit. It helps more people find Gopher Nation and talk about the great game of hockey.
And while speaking with Dan Woog, he became our 800th subscriber.
No prize, Dan. I'm sorry.
All right.
800.
Hopefully you got notified, Dan, and you're watching right now. Viggs, before we get into this weekend, it's Badger Week, man. Are you excited?
I am excited because I think the Badger program is back on an even playing field with the Gophers again. They had a little bit of a setback to their program for a couple of years. I think Mike Hastings has finally righted the ship, and I think we've got someone on who can maybe enlighten us about that process.
Well, he is our number one guest, Todd Milewski. Let's bring him in now. Todd, how you doing tonight? Oh, look at that.
Buck Live YouTube subscriber, Todd Milewski.
Yes, look at that.
Right.
Just like Jack Ramsey a couple weeks ago.
That's who I'm stealing it from. Apologies, but yeah.
Well, we appreciate it, Todd. And, I miss your videos. You don't do them much anymore. The station doesn't, or the newspaper doesn't it's not getting enough clicks. But a lot of us Gopher fans enjoyed your Facebook videos.
Thank you. It got to be okay, I can spend this 20 minutes finishing the story and getting home, or I can spend this extra 20 minutes on Facebook, which I enjoyed. And I think you guys, probably saw that in it. But
Viggs, you were a guest too, weren't you?
He was, a couple of times.
Couple times I popped on there. I was just excited. I'd hear it going on in the background. I was like, I got to be a part of that.
All right. Maybe it comes out maybe this weekend. All right. Maybe I do this Thursday, Saturday.
Thursday, Saturday.
Although
it's about TV, isn't it?
8 o'clock start.
You're gonna
maybe Saturday. Just recap
Saturday
the weekend for us.
All right.
Yeah.
That sounds fair.
And then we'll come bug you in the live chat.
Sure.
I think that's fair.
I'm good with that. Yeah, absolutely.
It's called engagement, Jude. We like engagement.
Yeah, we do like engagement, yes. But we do give Todd a hard time. But okay, we don't give you too much of a hard time. But I do notice a lot of Gopher fans that are watching our podcast are the ones watching your Facebook videos. So the more the people do that, the better. The more he'll do it often. But hopefully this weekend, knock on wood, we can get you to do a Facebook video.
I will plan one for after Saturday, because that'll be after the double border battle. We'll recap it all.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do that.
Well, Viggs, let's recap this past weekend. Minnesota Duluth comes to town and pretty much takes care of Minnesota 3-0, 4-1. I know you loved the second game better, but one goal on the weekend for Minnesota is just not going to work.
Yeah, I think it was kind of one of those weekends where Minnesota played pretty passively against Minnesota Duluth, and that usually is not going to work well unless you have high-end talent. And the Gophers have talent, but they don't have that first-round pick, one of the best player in college hockey type talents. And I think this team has to figure out that they're going to play a different way. And too many times this year, we've seen the Gophers be kind of hesitant in the game, and you can't be successful with a roster like they have playing hesitant. You have to play confident. You have to play with authority. And I thought they did that in the first 4 to 6 minutes on Friday night. I had talked about going into the series that I thought Minnesota would surprise UMD with their speed, their pace, their aggressiveness, because we saw that against North Dakota. We saw that against BC. We saw that against Michigan Tech. We saw the speed that this team can play with. But once UMD got that first goal, everything kind of fell apart.
It was all gone. It was all gone.
And all the confidence slipped away. And I kept looking back at that Winter Classic Bruce Boudreau tongue lashing he gave to the Capitals, when they're leading up to the Winter Classic. He's like, I've never seen a group of guys feel so sorry for themselves. Get that out of your brain. You're in the NHL. So they scored a couple goals against you. You have the opportunity to change things. And I just felt like it took Minnesota a long time to change things. And even on Saturday, they did play better, but you can't have that kind of effort and expect to get good results.
Well, talk about Saturday then, because I know you were a little happier about Saturday. The results just weren't there.
Yeah, I think they had more contributors on Saturday. They looked like they had a little bit better pace getting out of the zone, getting pucks in the offensive zone, and they were just a little more connected. And guys were harder on the forecheck. They were harder in the one-on-one battles, and that's where they're going to have to get their offense from. A couple bad bounces didn't go their way, maybe a tough call at the end when it looked like Minnesota was having some momentum, but just, it's not enough. You can't have all these series where you're getting 1 or 2 goals a night. You got to get to 3, and Minnesota didn't look like they were getting there in any fashion against UMD this weekend.
And on the opposite side, Todd, Wisconsin's had a great start to the year. They haven't lost the game yet.
Yeah, you can look at the competition as a path towards being 4-0-2. The first 2 wins against Lindenwood at Lindenwood, they had to go there, but they stumbled right out of the gate against Lindenwood last season. So I think that was a step. Having a pretty impressive couple of games down there. That was one step. Had a week off, played the under-18 team and did what they needed to do there, which last year they lost to the under-18 team. So it's another one of those things of like, okay, when you're turning the page, you're doing a different thing. Now, the
not getting any injuries too. That's always key.
Well, getting there a little bit, but the under-18 team in October is a lot different than the under-18 team in February and March. So
yeah,
that's also a difference. And this year's group, I don't know if, it's quite there. But then having Minnesota State here in Madison, obviously there's a lot built into that one with the Mike Hastings, Todd Connaught connections there, the players on both sides that played for the other team. Got out of that with 2 ties in which they, didn't play all that well for most of the series, but found a way, which was progress for them. And then Alaska this last weekend here, fell behind again, came back, got a win, got 2 wins. So yeah, it's been a better start than they had last year, which was desperately needed. They couldn't fall into another hole like they did last year and think they were going to get out of it easily.
Now, I saw your photos at the drop of the puck every game. I was kind of disappointed in the Mankato crowds.
Yeah.
That first game, I believe it was a Thursday. Was that a Thursday or?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That was a Thursday, Friday.
Yeah. It usually fills in a little better because like it's always kind of a later item crowd. People come in after every stoppage, so it wasn't as bad as your photo. But I was still a little surprised that Hastings is playing his old team and the crowd just wasn't there.
It's a little bit of a October trend lately that the October games here just don't get a lot of traction, even if the team like a couple of years ago started off really well, but the interest doesn't pick up until January, February. And that's one of the reasons why they're not thrilled with having the Minnesota series last year in November, this year, October, November. But it happens. Minnesota had it early at home 2 years in a row before that. So it all evens out, I'm sure. But yeah, things have been slowly coming up a little bit. I guess
winning helps. Winning's big.
It does, and attendance got so far down that apathy did set in.
We know all about that.
Well, right. It's really hard to dig out of that. You need to find a way to connect with people, and whether it's promotions, whether it's having the buzz of a big student section that you just let in for free and here make some noise for us and make this a fun place to be. That can turn things around too. They've done a pretty good job in getting youth hockey groups in, and so that's been good to see. But that's not exactly easy because a lot of them are playing on the weekend, so that isn't a real stable kind of group to count on there. But winning cures a lot, and winning cures attendance problems in a big way.
And Viggs, really, it's kind of a similar problem for Minnesota. I was surprised that the crowd that showed up, against BC, a crowd that showed up against, Duluth. I think I saw the attendance for Saturday it said 9,500. So that's telling me when you get your scan data, you'll see that there's quite a bit of scans that probably fairly high, 2,000 to 3,000.
Yeah, I mean, you're always expecting 20 to 30%, not showing up. And so when you're only selling 9,000, 9,500, you're not expecting probably more than 8 in the building for those games. So I've been surprised Minnesota, such a strong schedule to have, old rival Tech opening weekend, and Tech brought a lot of fans, Boston College, national power team, a lot of draft picks, good team, good rivalry, good hockey. Minnesota Duluth, you expect that building to be sold out at least for that one, because we talk about these in-state rivals being so important, and we just haven't seen it in the crowd so far. It's interesting to see, because I think the ticket prices for Gopher hockey are pretty reasonable right now compared to everything else in town. So it has been a little bit of a surprise for me.
And even on the media side, Todd, I've found that I have been down there alone with Bob Motzko after the Thursday BC game and after one of the Duluth games and Tech. So it's not just, we're there, but these are not our jobs. Viggs, you've got coaching saying we can't be at every game. We try to get as many as we can, but the media is not covering. How is that on your end? Are you sometimes one of the few people there at the end of a game at home?
Yeah, that's been the way that it's kind of trended over the last few years. There's been a little bit more interest lately. Occasionally the Milwaukee paper has someone there, and there's some other websites that are there occasionally. But yeah, I think in Minneapolis, we know it's, once football season ends, then there's more availability, right? Randy Johnson is there once football is done. And it's, people show up for games that matter, right? And that's true. That's why October is tough, and maybe not the best, example to put up on anything, but the games in October count for the same as the games in March, or the games in February and early March. So it's unfortunate that way, but it's also a product of just the length of the season that hockey has. And, they've talked about this in NHL too. It's a long time to keep in fan base's interest. And it's, I think it's the same way with college hockey, that you're asking people to pay attention for, close to 6 months, if not more than 6 months. And that when there's all sorts of other things going on in their lives, if not just the sports world around them. So, it's a lot to ask, and there's a lot more demands on people now. So I understand it. It's not a great visual like you talk about, but it's part of the world today. And I think people look at the half empty Kohl Center and, oh, that's terrible. It's like, yeah, it's still one of the biggest crowds you're ever going to get in college hockey. And that's what people, maybe forget.
Yep.
When there were 14 and 15,000 in there on a nightly basis back in the mid 2000s, how much of an anomaly was that? That was the, probably the unsustainable part. And now it's fallen the other way.
How many seats are there in Laban?
2,200 and change.
Okay. I sometimes wish that I wish these other rinks were just like a little bit bigger, and it would be such a good fit for a passionate crowd. Because you look at all the new rinks being built in college hockey, they're all in that 4,000 to 6,000 range.
Perfect size. Where you got demand. Yeah.
Yeah. USCHO did a great podcast this last week where they were talking about all the investments in hockey that have been made the last decade in these buildings, and just they're intentionally building them this size. Like UConn's was criticized for being too small. It's probably perfect for them.
Right.
You're guaranteeing a great atmosphere most nights. And I think that's really when college hockey delivers, is a passionate crowd that looks full. And that's why I think for Wisconsin and Minnesota, the bar is so high to fill those buildings. It can be a challenge.
I think about Michigan State in that context of, 5 years ago, they were struggling to get more than 3,000 in that building. And then, now they are full up with a waiting list, and people are, hurting to try and get in for games. And that's at a, 6,000, I want to say, around 6,000 seat venue, and which is really good for college hockey. That's about what a building should be. For years, Wisconsin played at the Dane County Coliseum, 8,600 fans, sold it out for decades. And even that got to be a challenge toward the end. And so then you move into a much bigger building, got a lot more seats to fill. Prices are about the same. The demand isn't there. It really changes the dynamic of, instead of, having to be a season ticket holder and then you've sold your tickets for the season. Now you can pick and choose, and it's a lot more on the school to make it a draw, is it a promotion thing? Is it a, winning obviously does it, like we're talking about, but there's more to it that has come into it over the last couple of decades here.
And of course, being St. Thomas just opened up their arena this past weekend as well. Looks gorgeous.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way to do it, right? Is to build these really nice arenas with nice suites, club sections, premium seating. St. Thomas definitely delivered on the recipe right now.
But you got to look at the times too. When Minnesota built Mariucci, and then you got the Kohl Center, you've got the Ralph. When they opened those things, they were all full, and they were all rolling in the money, Vigs. So
I think when you didn't have the NHL in town, it made a lot of sense to have a big Mariucci. It just was perfect timing. Now that the Wild are back, the team of 18,000 over there draws a lot of dollars and fan interest, and it's just a different level.
Definitely a different level. So let's close the book on this weekend, Vigs. Bob wasn't happy with a lot of execution. I noticed he kind of separated effort and execution a bit on Friday night. Just because he's
but
like,
he
"I thought
but
the
he
effort was
keeps
there."
bringing up the word effort in all
Yeah.
of his media. Like since then, it's like he's like,
He
I
did.
really put my foot in my mouth, but he
He
keeps
did.
bringing it up, and
Yes.
I think that's frustrating as a coach that you have to have effort from your team. Like that should be a non-negotiable thing as a coach at this
Mhm.
level. Is players should just bring effort every night, and that shouldn't be a concern. I don't think I've seen Minnesota have a weekend where that's been lacking, probably since Bob's first year here. It's been a long time since effort's been mentioned by a coach in the post game. And that's the biggest takeaway from the weekend for me.
All right, then. Well, that'll finish this kind of first segment. That means we need to talk about one of our sponsors, Vig's Gateway Fiber. They're getting everyone set up on the north end with high-speed internet.
Yeah, Gateway Fiber brings the effort all the time. And if you need high-speed internet, if you're doing Zoom meetings, if you're doing a podcast, if you're watching a good stream, you got to have fiber. And in Minnesota, we're the state of hockey. Bad internet connection is like a bad line change. It slows everything down, causes chaos, might even lose the game. It's going to be frustrating. We want someone who's not going to be in the penalty box or put us in the penalty box. You want 2 gigabits per second, Gateway Fiber is your internet. So they're just not another provider. They're on your team. Visit gatewayfiber.com or call 1-800-201-4339 to see if Gateway Fiber is available in your area, because life is too short for bad internet.
All right. Let's get to Vig's top 20 for this week. You're starting to get a little more sense of what's going on, Vig's, but it's still a little crazy trying to figure out where you want to put people or teams, I should say.
It feels like everybody in the top 20 is losing games at some point. It's not like someone is just clearly running away with things. I've still got Minnesota in my top 20. They are just hanging on by a thread. I heard Jim Connolly on his podcast kind of chastise voters who still have them in their top 20. I look at some of these teams that are on the fringe of the top 20. I just don't think a lot of those teams have key wins, or they'll have a key win and they'll have like 4 or 5 bad losses to go with it. So it's really tough in college hockey this year to figure out who's who. One thing that's becoming clear is you look at the interconference records, Michigan State, Michigan, Penn State are really good. Those are 3 teams that are winning a lot of games. You look at the national picture for tournament bids, those 3 have pulled a lot of weight for the Big Ten. Wisconsin as well. They made my top 20 this week. They've had a very good non-conference record so far. I don't know if Wisconsin has quite the schedule strength, but when you don't lose many games, it still contributes quite a bit. The middle of the top 20, who knows what's going to happen? Minnesota Duluth really impressed me this weekend. They hadn't really played anybody until Minnesota. So very impressive performance from them. Hockey East, they're a good league, but there's a lot of inconsistency there. BU, BC, Province, Maine have all had, Connecticut, all have had kind of some struggles here, but I'm confident those are good teams. Who's the best team out of that group? Are they going to be like a number 1 type seed? I don't really know yet.
How does this compare to your list, Todd? Who did you have as number 1?
Top is pretty similar. I'm thinking through. I know through 5 for sure. I don't remember where I had North Dakota, but somewhere in that 6 to 8 range somewhere. Yeah, and look, BU's had some losses. They're going to be fine. I mean, this is it's October. It's everyone's bouncing around everywhere in the first month of the season. I think I'm higher on Ohio State. This is probably about where I have them now, but I had them higher before. This is like the Steve Rollick, like perfect setup. No one's expecting much out of them coming into the season. A lot of players, who's on the team? I don't know. We're throwing out this group that we have, and we're going to all know them by the end of the season. And this is the way it works for them. They consistently over deliver. And so I'm cautiously thinking they are a team that really could Now they could make a jump here. The results so far have been a little, a little up and down for me.
You know, I look at this comment, one little comment here, no Cornell in there. Ha ha. I think someone's poking at Adam Woden, but he did get some. They did get some votes, didn't they, Viggs?
Yep, they're in the poll this week. So the one team I'm probably maybe a little low on here is Quinnipiac. Maybe they're better than 7. They just have had some games where I haven't been impressed. I've watched a little bit of ESPN Plus and seen them, but it's hard to know right now.
And it doesn't help that there's been, like you said, a lot of chaos, a lot of strange upsets. Big teams losing to weak teams at home. It's been chaotic, Todd.
I think that's good in general, though.
Yes.
I think I don't want to see somebody, 3 teams run off to 10-0 starts and nobody touches them and they don't play each other. So a lot of this is that we've seen a lot of, especially non-conference, games so far. The big teams are playing the big teams, and that's refreshing to see. Michigan State, BU, Michigan, Western Michigan last weekend. We're going to see more, as the conference season go on, but we don't always see those, maybe this number of big games this early in the season. And I think that goes into the why, there's so many losses among those top 10 teams coming in, because they're playing each other.
Yeah, I mean, we had the Quinnipiac Maine series last weekend too, like a good Hockey ECCAC matchup. So I think we're seeing a lot of the top teams play each other, but we're also seeing some like the bottom teams play each other. So you're trying to say, okay, they're like 6-0 or they're like 7-1-1 or something, but how good are they? Because they haven't really played teams like in the top 15 or the
Miamis of the world, right?
Yeah, the Miamis of the world. So I think it's interesting there because I look at the MPI right now and it's basically useless.
Right.
So
thank you.
Sometimes you look at it this time of year and you're starting to see some trends or something.
You see trends, but it kind of stays close to around what the top 20 is. It's not too far off.
But right now the MPI seems pretty useless to see anything nationally. Because usually, as we get done with the non-conference schedules, I feel like pairwise started to show some stuff a little bit at this point of year.
Yeah. We're going to have to kind of figure out with the NPI when is it legitimate, or at least somewhat legitimate of a record. Yeah.
Because I think Adam Woden did publish his, and it was just all goofy. And Tim Bruley showed up on Saturday, Viggs, and he's like, I did it, and it was just so bad, I refused to publish it. and he's kind of along the idea of you. He's thinking more still late December. And I think that's just more him kind of, protecting his numbers, like since he kind of came up with that whole thing, 20 years ago. But he's thinking it might be closer to, getting into some, league season and December.
But what was crazy about the pairwise is it sort of made sense at this time of year. I mean, it wasn't going to tell you everything, but you could at least look at the pairwise rankings, and they kind of made sense with, results and things like that. Like right now, I think MPI, like you're looking at teams at the top, it's like Minnesota State and Wisconsin. I mean, how's that possible? So
a live update from Nick Angel. Vigo has some flow rocking. He's liking the flow tonight. You're looking good there, Viggs.
Yeah, I got a little Duke Cannon in there, so I do have the flow in there, so it's helping.
All right, let's take a look at other things here. Viggs, I go to the game Saturday night. I didn't really look at the roster. I'm like, I didn't really notice that. Wait a second. Graham Harris is playing. Why is Graham Harris playing? Both Thomas and Ludke were out, and we really had no idea that was even coming.
Yeah, Tanner Ludke has something viral. I was trying to read the tea leaves about, Thomas being short term and Ludke being maybe a couple weeks. And it turns out Ludke's going to be out a couple weeks. So he was dealing with it a little bit at North Dakota, was playing through it. went through it on the first game against Minnesota Duluth, and they just decided to pull him for Saturday and let him get back to 100%. So that was a surprise. Mason Moe had to move back to center.
Mhm.
Maybe actually that's a good fit for him. He was one of the players for Minnesota that impressed me during the weekend. You know, you're trying to look at the Gopher roster and like what forwards are delivering right now. Mason Moe is definitely one of them. And then Cal Thomas has an injury that, you know, is nagging him right now. They held him out of practice Monday and Tuesday this week, but Bob Motzko at availability today said it's looking like he can play this weekend. I think
That's
one
good.
of the things is, you know, with the Thursday, Saturday game, maybe it makes it easier for him to play through it. You know, has a little time in between the games to recover. So they're hopeful that he's going to play this week. You know, kind of a nagging injury.
Yeah. And I'll bring this one up from Matthew. Graham Harris is an absolute dog and deserves a spot in the lineup. I noticed him right away Saturday night, Vigs.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of those players who wasn't waiting for things to happen. He was engaging. He was making quick decisions. He was forcing the other team to make decisions. You know, those are things you want out of your forwards right now. You want them to be direct. You know, when Minnesota's played really well against North Dakota and BC, it's because they were on the battles early, physical contact before the puck battle even happened. That's going to be critical for Minnesota. If Graham Harris continues to do that, you know, he's going to get a spot in the lineup. I mean, you look at his age, I think he's the same age as Brody Lamb or older.
Mm-hmm.
So he's an experienced player who's paid his dues.
How's Wisconsin been doing in the injury area, Todd?
They've been dinged up a little bit early. Zach Schulz has missed the last, I want to say, 2 weeks. I think he went, and a lot of their injuries have been in practice, honestly, which is not encouraging. But lower body for him. They had backup goalie Eli Pulver had a injury in practice last week. Didn't dress in either of those games, and you get into the coaches are really hating the roster limits and the goalies and everything like that, because it's a tricky spot if you lose a goalie for a long period of time and you only have two, and that coaches don't love going through practices, a week of practice with two goalies. So but
unless you're Michigan Tech, don't they have like 30 guys in the roster meetings?
Well, when you don't opt into the settlement, I guess you can still do that. But yeah, it sounds like they're both on their way back, and Schulz expected to play this week.
I do wonder how quickly that rule changes. You know, the decision was made by non-hockey people. It sounds like the NCAA is maybe turning over their rules committee to hockey people instead of going through this process that they've gone through for years. Because I think this is impacting a lot of teams. Yeah,
it's just that was baked into the settlement, which, you know, is then codified in all sorts of, you know, becomes NCAA bylaws there. And so I don't know how much when you get into the sport by sport level, they're going to have a say over that part of it, the number. But I do hope they add some leeway, some tolerance for specifically for a goalie in hockey, because this is different than any other position. You know, in baseball you have 20 pitchers. In hockey you have 3 goalies, and you have to dress 2. You have to dress 2, or the game cannot start. So if you lose 2 of them, you've got to throw somebody in the pads and just have them sit on the bench and hope your other goalie doesn't get hurt. So, you know, illness, injury, all that can happen. I hope there's some way of figuring this out, because I mean, the real concern is the practice week of, you know, not overtaxing goalies through that and still getting the reps in for the rest of the players against goalies. So I don't know if there's some way of, you know, making some opportunity for a practice goalie that isn't technically on the roster, but can do something in practice to help the team. It sounds like that's a heavy lift, though, from the people I've talked to get something like that done.
We saw that similar 2 years ago, Viggs, because, speaking of Grand Forks, I remember Nathan Airy was nagging injuries in his freshman season. They had, I think it was Matt Bryant they brought in.
They brought in
And that
the
was
club
kind of his
goalie.
first. It was he was on the road trip. He was their third goalie.
And Potter even had to put on the pads for a practice because they were down to one, and they were tired of shooting against the shooter tutor in practice. Like, you see a team practicing their power play, and they got the shooter tutor up there, and you've got a D1 college team with number 1 draft picks, and that's how they are preparing themselves and developing. I just, I think of women's basketball, who's got the men practice players that come to help them prepare for the season. I just don't understand how you can't have that in hockey, at least for the goalies, because college hockey is always getting bigger and bigger.
And I'm guessing they probably had that. They probably had that when they had a JV team.
Yeah.
40 years ago. So it was kind of built in. And then technically someone could come up from the JV team, couldn't they? Before our time, we were kind of kids, but isn't that kind of how it worked?
Yeah, I think so. Bob Motzko was like a JV player, and he got cut by Herb Brooks multiple times from playing hockey at the U. So, different times. I think this whole roster limit thing with the settlement just got rushed, and hockey didn't get the consideration it should have.
Agreed.
All right. We had this question sent to me on Twitter, Viggs. David S. on Twitter asked, I'm curious to what your guys' thoughts are on the following. No one on this year's team has the it factor. In recent years, so many players and studs like Snuggie, Cooley, Nyes, Pitlick, Myers. No one on this year's team is separating themselves as an elite player. What are your thoughts? We do not have an it player. We have some potential it players, maybe later this year or next year, but not right now.
Now's the time for those guys to grab it. The opportunity is there for guys like Brody Lamb, Brody Zemer, Jimmy Clark, to take that step, Leo Gruba, but it just seems a little out of their reach right now. You need to see consistent impact from them. I thought Brody Lamb last year had a great first half. The second half, it kind of disappeared from him a little bit. He's got an opportunity right now to really make his mark. He's going to get the ice time. He's going to get the opportunity. And I just think, these first 4 weekends have all been tough. There's no easy games. Everyone's bringing their A game against them. They're not playing great. It's a little bit of a struggle right now, but they definitely do not have an it player on the roster right now.
We'll have to see what happens there. Definitely have to see what happens. Kind of a surprise. We had Eric Shearhorn last week on the show, Viggs. And I think it was the next morning when he found out he's being upgraded from radio to TV, and he did a damn good job on TV.
Yeah, he looked really comfortable. I was at the game on Friday, so I was just kind of getting bits and pieces of it. But then I watched Saturday on the broadcast, and he seemed comfy up there. I think Ben Clymer's maybe been giving him lessons on the side about how to do TV because he looked very comfortable up there.
He did look comfortable. So congratulations to him. We're hoping that Pat's back, lower body injury, whatever is going on with Pat. Who knows right now.
Wish him the best, Pat.
Oh,
get better. Heal up.
Get back in the booth. Hey, I don't know if he'll be back this weekend. I think Tanner Hoops might be making the trip to Madison, which would be his first. Of course, it was his first trip to Grand Forks too, so that was interesting to him as well. Well, before we get to the end here, Biggs, we need to talk about our other sponsor of the podcast, Cub Foods.
Yeah, Cub Foods. I got my pumpkin loaf the other week. Get some caramel apples right now for the Halloween weekend. If you need some fall stuff, Cub's got you covered. Fresh picked apples, pumpkin spice, everything. Cub's your one-stop shop for everything fall. Whether you're baking, hosting game day, craving a cozy night in, Cub has the flavors that make fall feel like fall. So swing by your local Cub, stock up on everything. They're one of us. Shop Cub, shop happy.
All right. Of course, we thank Gateway and Cub for being sponsors of the GPL podcast. It's Badger weekend, guys.
Take that, you stinking Badgers.
Glenn, always with the great sound bit there. Viggs, how you feeling about this weekend right now? Little uneasy, maybe?
I mean, I'm definitely feeling uneasy. You know, they're battling a lot of injuries right now, the Gopher team. I saw some guys get nicked up in practice today, even. No updates exactly what's going to happen with those guys. But this is a group that's really fighting through it. And, you know, I think the coaching staff is kind of in a state where they have to be patient with this group, you know, especially with the roster limits and the way things are. Like, you kind of have your roster and you have to figure out a way to get them to the finish line. And it's not going to be by beating the whip right now. You know, you've got to be patient with them. I think a lot of Gopher fans are not happy right now. You know, Bob Motzko on his radio show says 2-5-1 is not what people expect from Gopher hockey, and we have to wear it. You know, that's our record right now. We have to move forward from it. So it's kind of a complicated situation right now for the Gophers heading into a weekend where it looks like Wisconsin's surging a little bit.
Todd, they definitely are surging, and you're getting Minnesota at a good time, I think.
Yeah, and this is, you know, it's always a test whenever Wisconsin plays Minnesota. We know that, but especially right now, after you're coming off of, you know, having, you know, the winning the 4 games you should have won in non-conference against Lindenwood and Alaska. 2 ties against Mankato was essential. I was figuring that would be a split, and so that's essentially the same thing. But it was all kind of leading up to this now, where it's this weekend against Minnesota and next weekend at Michigan, and it's you're going to find out a lot right now about whether this team can score, about whether this team can defend, whether it can be as disciplined as it needs to be, because that's been a big thing for every Mike Hastings team, is that they do so much better when they're not killing penalties, and they don't have to do that as part of the game. Can they keep that up? They've had their moments so far. They've taken a couple of major penalties and had to kill those off in 5-on-3s, and there's nothing that frustrates Mike Hastings more than that. So this is a point where, you know, you're gonna know by the end of this weekend. Kind of feels like 2 years ago when the Badgers went up to Minnesota with a pretty good record. You wanted to see how it was going to play there. Well, I want to see how it's going to play here at the Kohl Center against Minnesota. That a couple of years ago, they won 2 games, part of a thing at 8-2 start of the season, 9-1, whatever it was. I don't know if I can expect that this year, but I think we're gonna be able to tell which direction they're pointing, just kind of in general for the rest of the season, by how they play this weekend. Maybe not even the results, but how they play, whether they are able to dictate the parts of the game they want to play.
Now, the Thursday-Saturday series, the best I can tell is that, you know, we've got the big volleyball matchup between Nebraska and Wisconsin on Friday, which will be on the Big Ten Network, 8 p.m. I'm guessing to keep some of the crowds happy and keep, you know, a little more on BTN itself, that they moved this game to Thursday, at least one of the games to Thursday, for TV. Is that the right line of thinking, or do we still not?
Jupe, I knew this was going to be a question, so I made some calls this week.
Yes.
It's actually going to be in a story on Madison.com and BadgerExtra.com tomorrow morning, but I'll give you the preview here. Is that, yes, the Thursday game is because of TV. The Friday night was already taken up by Wisconsin-Nebraska volleyball, Halloween night game
at the field house, so not the Kohl Center.
No, but that's going to be a zoo. That match is always remarkable,
Yes.
and throwing it on Halloween night in Madison. Whew. So to get a game on, they had to move that one to Thursday. Then the other half of it was they thought they were going to have a window on BTN Saturday night for the second game. So they left it there. That fell through, but then they just decided, well, we're not going to move it to Friday because, well, they didn't want to move it to Friday. So there's also the women's series at Laban that has to be worked around, and that is now Friday night, Saturday afternoon. So hopefully
You'll
lot
be
of
covering
really
a lot of
hockey
hockey this weekend.
Yeah,
won't you?
and yeah, I'm looking forward to it, because I mean, there's a lot of weekends in the summer where I'm kind of doing nothing and would love to be at a game, and instead of writing about some lawsuit that's being filed or something like that. But I'll take 4 games between the Gophers and the Badgers all weekend covering that.
It'll be fun.
anytime.
And that women's team of the Badgers, they're so dominant. Jeez. When's the last time they lost a game?
Last November.
I mean, there you go.
Yeah.
Last November. Nothing but greatness with
36 or 37 undefeated, 22 wins in a row, something like that.
It's pretty attractive, even for players from Minnesota to consider.
I've heard.
Even with deep ties to Minnesota.
Deep ties.
Did you ever reach out to the polls and find anything?
I talked to Emily.
Mm.
She said the right things.
Yeah.
That's a tough spot. I mean, you've got to
it is.
acknowledge that.
It is. I'm waiting for the first photo of Johnny Pohl wearing Wisconsin gear or Chrissy Wendell wearing Wisconsin gear.
I don't know.
I'm telling you, I think they're going to have like that NHL scout black with the black logo. So it's there, but it's not there. I think that's the style they're going to be going with.
That's probably the smart way of doing it. Yeah.
You know what? It makes a good story for you, though, Todd. It makes a great story for you.
There is going to be some interesting trips back to Ritter there for the Badgers in a couple of years. Yeah.
It's fun. It's Badger Week. Let's have fun with it. I wish we could make it this weekend, but with the day off, it just kind of messed things up. So I wasn't able to make it because I know Hastings, he's like, come on down. We'll get you all set up. And we just haven't had a chance to do it yet.
I know he probably would even invite us to practice if we asked. Very nicely, would have been really fun to see the Badgers skate.
Wow! Did you take that knife right out of Todd's back on that one?
Yep. Well, Mike basically.
I do have to say I was invited in once before the season, so I appreciated that.
So still can't see any practices, huh?
Not on the regular, no.
Wow.
Well, it should be a good weekend of hockey. I'm going to be busy with my own hockey team and Halloween here, but I will definitely be glued to the TV watching the games on. I'm most interested to see this weekend if we see a change in the Gopher forwards. I feel like the defense has stepped it up a little bit more. I talked to Max Rudd today about how the D are playing, and he said the biggest thing is that they had so many guys who hadn't played much the last couple of years that they were kind of playing hot potato. They're getting pucks and they're just getting rims. They're just going off the glass. They just didn't want to commit turnovers. Mm-hmm. I think some of those D, especially John Whipple and Rudd, are getting more confidence in holding on to the puck just another second and making a hockey play. Like they're connecting a little bit. We didn't see it very much on Friday against Minnesota Duluth, but we saw it a little bit more on Saturday. We didn't see it so much the first game against North Dakota, but we saw it the second. And I think that's a big thing for Minnesota is that their D are playing better. The big question mark for me now is can the forwards execute? Can they get the puck and get north and get their forecheck going? Because that's been the biggest inconsistency for me with the Gopher team right now is getting on the other team and creating chances and turnovers. Because when they did that to Michigan Tech, it looked like, okay, this team hasn't missed a beat. But we just haven't seen that very consistently out of the Gophers.
So how are you dividing up the points this weekend, Viggs? A certain former SID was not happy that we picked sweep last week, and it was the opposite. He basically blamed us.
I almost am leaning sweep the other way this weekend.
6 points for the Badgers?
Is
that your official call?
I'm worried that we might see 6 for the Badgers this weekend. I mean, the injury stuff, the effort stuff. I mean, how often do you hear a coach volunteer that he's disappointing the effort in their team? I don't know if that's a 1 week fix. And I think we're waiting for some people to step forward and show that they're leading this team into the fight. And until they do that, it's hard to have a lot of confidence behind Minnesota, especially the way Wisconsin's played especially the history between the players on the Wisconsin roster now and the players on the Minnesota roster, I'm sure the Badgers are licking their chops this weekend. I don't think they've been happy with the way things have gone, and this could be a statement weekend for them. And I don't think it's because the Badgers are going to put up tons of points. I think it's because the Gophers are going to have a tough time getting to 3. And I don't know if they're disciplined enough to not give up 3 or 4 goals in a night right now. I'm just not seeing enough of the detail in scanning and picking up sticks, or the detail in engaging and lifting a stick going into a puck battle. It's just been a little slower to come for the Gophers this year.
I'm going to go with 4 points for the Badgers, 2 points for the Gophers. I think there's, some overtime bits there, something along those lines. What do you got, Todd?
I hear the Gophers are stars of the shootout now, so is a development that I wasn't sure.
One of them's out sick, though.
One of them's out. Lucky won't be there,
man,
so
yeah.
It's not like the World Juniors where they
Ouch.
could just send out Mooney time after time.
Right. I'm going to go 3 on each side. I'm going to say that the Badgers get the first one on Thursday, but the Gophers, after having an extra day of hearing about it here in Madison, are going to get a Saturday night win.
Very interesting. How is it that the guy who covers the Badgers is more positive than us, Fegs? I guess
he hasn't watched the Gophers as closely as we have.
That is true.
It's been tough. Friday was a tough night in the press box watching the team play. They did play better on Saturday, but I see Tassie and Fitzgerald seem to be a little bit better this year.
Yeah,
they've got their mojo back. I think Logan Hensler is a developing player who's grown a lot. It's just kind of a scary roster right now for Wisconsin. I feel like they have more established players playing, and I think it's going to be pretty low scoring. I would be taking the under in both games if I was betting my pizza money, like Jim Connolly likes to say, especially on Friday night. And then I think the Gophers having to spend Halloween in Madison isn't going to be easy. I hope they're staying somewhere out of town where they can maybe get away from things, but you never know how it's going to work out. So it's going to be an interesting weekend.
All right. Well, I think we need to get to some overtime here because, we're already getting it from some of the people in the chat, But here's Mote thinks, Todd, he likes you better than us right now.
But he won't put Vigo -2.
Give him time
because he knows that this team is struggling a little bit right now. So
it's true. It's true.
Show me time for the Gophers, I think, before I can get a lot of confidence in them. And the fans, be patient with this roster.
Yes,
these are good players. They just have to figure it out. And I think one thing we've seen with Minnesota teams over the years is these players put a lot of pressure on themselves. So no one wants to win more than them. Mm-hmm. As much as the fans would like to see their team win, the players want to win. So they just have to fight their way out of it. And the coaches are going to let them. They're going to keep throwing them over the boards and giving them chances.
Well, thanks for coming on, Todd. It's always great to have you as a guest. You're our number one guest, man.
This is my favorite week of the year. One of my 2 favorite weeks of the year is being here, being out with you guys.
Well, we're glad you can always come on. Cappy's just a little bit behind you. It's going to be tough for him to catch you, but that's fine with us. You'd be even further ahead if you weren't kind of taken off of hockey for a year. So
missed that one series for sure. I don't know if I was on the other time, but I think I would because it was the first half and I was still doing hockey that year.
Yeah, I think you were. One time you were at Penn State for a basketball, or was it Nebraska?
I remember. Yeah, it was a Penn State. Yeah, midweek game. Yeah.
Covering b-ball, your favorite.
Oh yeah.
But thanks for coming on, man. It's always great to have you on. You ready for some overtime?
Absolutely. Bring it on.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the GPL podcast. We'll be back next week to recap this series with the Badgers and preview the series with Notre Dame coming into town. So For those of you watching live on Twitter and YouTube, stay tuned for overtime. For the rest of you, we'll catch you next week on the GPL podcast.
Take that, you stinking Badgers!
If you are watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and get notified each time we go live or post a video. If you listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please rate our show and leave a review.
For those of you watching live, you know what's next. It's Vigo's Beverage of the Week. It's time for overtime. Oh, look at that dark beast.
This is a dark beast. This is a Surly Darkness. I figured a red can would be good for playing the red this week. This is a Cola Darkness. So Darkness Day is coming up here at Surly Brewing Company.
It's got a hint of cola taste to it, or what's...
It's got a little bit of cola syrup, Demerara syrup, vanilla, and orange peel. So
okay.
I've had some of these imperial stouts that are colas. I wouldn't have thought I'd have enjoyed them, but they're pretty good. Cheers.
Yes. Cheers to you.
It has a very strong cola flavor to it.
Oh, there
It's
you go.
kind of strange, but it finishes like darkness.
I've gone all red with the colors in here this weekend too. Just kind of like I went green for North Dakota. You know, it's funny. I was out with Schlossman up in Grand Forks after the Saturday game, and he's like, when we talk about reading the media, he's like, we used to have a ton of reporters coming up here. They wouldn't miss a series in Grand Forks,
Right?
And now I was literally the only person there. Viggs would have been there, but he's doing coaching. I think your wife was out of town. You couldn't make it, but both nights it was just me. And that is just unlike what it was 10, 15 years ago.
Availability today is me, Wally, and the WCCO TV guy camera. So it's just the three of us
Trying to get more scoop.
No, it wasn't the news team. It was the sports camera guy. But it was just me with Max and Brody today during availability.
Where has the Minnesota Daily been?
I don't know. Maybe they've got class during availability on Tuesdays. I don't know.
There was somebody there on Saturday. I didn't recognize her.
Okay.
I think she might have been there on Friday too.
Yeah, I think she was there on Friday. She tried to start the goalie controversy.
Yeah.
Like, Airy missed practice the other day. What's going on there? It was like, oh man, we got the Jess Myers.
We let her just kind of go into that one, and then then Moscow Laser goes, "Yeah, don't bother with the goalie question."
It's just like, oh man, I feel like Jess is maybe the mentor for the Daily this year, but you know,
it's fun times, and that's kind of become a lot of it, Todd. Yeah, it's a huge job for you, but the social aspect of seeing you and Schlossman and all the different people, and when you go to regional, it's just it makes it a lot funner. Even when your team is not doing well, it's just like, hey, it's great to see you. It's that connection we get with other people around the college hockey world that we don't get to see all the time.
And I've been like ridiculously lucky to be at the last 25, 6, 7, whatever Frozen Fours, men's Frozen Fours for USCHO. And I mean, it's weird how it's changed in that time of, it used to be people came to that and same thing in like with baseball, every paper covered the World Series regardless of whether they had a team in it or not. And it used to be that way with hockey. And, it's been obviously a lot of cuts and a lot of budget cutbacks, and the landscape is so much different than it was. I mean, even 5 years ago I was thinking today of the Phil Kessel game here. And
I was there as a fan that night.
I remember the post game because you guys know the Cole Center setup where the the media room is in one corner, the visiting team locker room is in the opposite corner. So you have to, Wisconsin has a press conference in there, but it takes them, 10, 15 minutes to get in there. So in that interim time, you have to, run down to the other corner, wait. Hopefully someone waves you in to past the guard to go talk to people. And I was remembering that night, it was me, Andy Baggett, a student reporter, at least one student reporter from Wisconsin. I think 2 kids from the Daily, and then Greg Wong, and I think it was Rachel at that point.
Could have
for the
been.
Star Trib.
Mm-hmm.
And just that, like, that's what it should be. And that's what it was for a long time. And that's I tell
They know that internet is all that matters. They know they get a lot of clicks on either Vikings football or the pro sports or Gopher football. So that is just all they report on, unless something bad happens.
Right.
We miss Randy because Randy he comes to media day, he tries to get there as much as he can, but I think he was a little bit there. I think he was there when there was a bye week, Vigs, but they just you're covering Gopher football.
Yeah, I just don't think there's enough room in the paper to print it. Like, they just don't make room for college hockey in there very often. Once football's over, then they're looking for things to publish, and then the opportunity's there. I will say that, getting to see the college hockey media is the one good thing about regionals. Is you get to see people from the other teams. Still want campus sites, but that's the nice part of regionals, is seeing guys like Todd.
That might be subconsciously why I don't have a hatred on the regionals. I mean, I understand. I know there would be a lot better atmospheres and well, attendance and everything at campus sites. But like, I wonder why, if that maybe for me is why I like, okay, I can be okay with regionals because, pull together media from 4 teams, and it's a good chance I know someone from all of them. And it's a good time to have everyone in the same building like that.
And I do wonder if that's a little bit of the old guard. Like, we're at the regional last year, and Sandelin's there, and Saratori's there, and there's just all kinds of people there commiserating with Bob, even after the game against UMass. That's there, and that's kind of a getaway for them as opposed to the pressure maybe of being at home. It's a different
Mote
animal.
talking about Ustro used to be the hotbed of college hockey hatred. Well, that's where a lot of us created our first usernames back in the 90s. It was kind of the first message board that Bruley created. And I'm not going to use my real name. I love the stars and kind of amateur astronomer. I'm like, I like the name Jupiter. That's where it went.
There's a lot of places for hatred on the internet now.
Oh, that's just the problem.
Yes.
Especially on Twitter and whatnot.
Yeah.
Oh, we got Andrew here. I was on YesCho for over a decade before I was on GPL. Things have changed, Obviously, I think a couple of years ago, I was with Tim Bruley in the Minnesota press box. I'm like, how do I get to my account again? How do I redo this? And he's like, geez, I don't even know. I hardly ever go on there.
Yeah.
Todd, where's the locale for all the Badger hatred on the internet these days? Is it all on X? Is it Facebook? Is it Reddit? What do they have? Something else that I'm not knowing about?
I think if you're looking for bang for your buck of hatred, Facebook is the place to be.
Yes.
There are a couple of the fan forum type sites that are still in operation that are fairly well populated, especially when things go as bad as they have for the football team this year. but yeah, it kind of just floats to, wherever the newest, most popular platform is, and we're really talking about a lot of older people that do this anyway, right? So
That's probably why it's Facebook.
It's right, that's why you kind of gravitate to there as opposed to any of the other.
Viggs, while you were doing
is active
part of the Motzko interview, on Friday, I was sitting next to one of the interns who was, doing some of the posts, and she's like, "Gosh, the hate on Facebook is just off the charts." And it is. If you go in any Gopher hockey Facebook post, it is so negative, no matter what's happening. Fire the coach and all this. It's just.
And I think that slips over into the people that are passionate with the program, and you just have to realize that voice is like 3% of your fan base or less. It's such a small percentage, and they just get amplified with that platform. It's crazy, but that's not real. That's not what the real 100% fan base is like. Otherwise, the building would be empty. Right.
One of the things I do with football games here is I do a lot of stories about fans and the fan experience, and so that's how I end up writing about brats and beer and all this sort of stuff. But
I love the Broward story. It was great.
Brats.
Thank you.
Casing's got to get that snap. It's got to hold up over an entire game day. I mean, I did a deep dive on that, Todd.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. So I went to a few bars during a road game, just to kind of get the pulse of, like, do people still go to bars to watch the Badgers play football? And yes, they do, and a lot of them still do. And like, this was for the Alabama game, so they were getting hammered early. They were not in it at all. And so I was expecting just this like rage from people, and it was like that wasn't it at all. People, like real people, when you talk to them, have real sensibilities about, it's not going well. They could be doing a lot better. There should be things they do better, but the first step is not always fire someone. And when we spend a lot of time online and you read a lot of stuff there, you might think that that's the only voice that's out there, but you're right, Viggs. That's a real small, loud minority. I think that it's not a valid, thought sometimes, but it's still pretty extreme.
I think that for football, for a Gopher fan, when you see a team like Indiana, which has been terrible for over 50 years or more, all of a sudden they're in the playoff last year, Viggs. They're looking to be in the playoff this year. And here's Minnesota still. We're trying to get there. We're trying to get there. And then you see this happen to basically a loser team that's been losers forever. And it just, you get frustrated.
Yeah, you get frustrated, but then you remember that Mark Cuban is giving tons of money to Indiana athletics because he just divested himself from the NBA and he's got tons of cash.
Minnesota doesn't have rich people.
They do, but they don't have like that kind of rich person. They don't have a Phil Knight. They don't have the Oklahoma State guy. They don't have the Rocket Mortgage guy at like Michigan State has. They don't have a group of NHL alumni that are fed up and want to kickstart their program, like that is happening at some other schools. I think you have an alumni base of Minnesota that's kind of like wait and see. I think the fundraising at Minnesota is a little more challenging than other places for whatever reason. It's just hard. So it's not really an even playing field anymore. I do think the playing field nationally has never been more even because of revenue sharing and things like that are coming into play, but it's still unfair. There still are going to be the teams that have the $20 million in rev share and then another 30 from donors. Will NIL Go have an impact on that? Who knows? We'll see.
We have Yanni.
I think Yanni paid for the Northrop renovation. He's not paying for.
True.
He's not paying for the upgrades to the
that was
Mariucci
good.
Concourse. But it's just different, and I don't think Bob's thinking anyone feels sorry for him. He still has a great recruiting base to pluck from. You look at the recruits for 2 years from now, I have to argue it's probably the best in the country. But right now, it's not looking easy. It's going to be a hard year.
But it's also a Minnesota thing, Viggs. We see another team come up that's been the loser for so long. And you think something like along the lines of the Vikings, how long their frustration for 60 years. And the teams growing up that stunk when we were growing up, Tampa Bay, New Orleans, Arizona, St. Louis, whatever. And they've gone on to go to Super Bowls and win Super Bowls. And you just see that going, we could never just even get back there. And it's almost been 50 years. So it's kind of that Minnesota jealousy thing that you see these teams that you grew up being terrible, being successful, even if it is for just 1 year. We would take that 1 year, Viggs.
Yeah, I think Gopher hockey is in a tough spot. They have the 2 titles, but what if Randy Skarda didn't hit the post? What if Logan Cooley didn't take that penalty? How differently does the Woog and Motzko era look if, you just flip those 2 things in time travel? What happens if, Morton Anderson makes that field goal against the Atlanta Falcons and they go to the Super Bowl with that team? Sports are funny, and you can look at it one way or you can look at it another way, and only one team gets to win at the end of the year.
I miss Nate Wells on Twitter telling us how many total seasons it's been with all the pro teams. I think he jumps on LinkedIn once in a while now to put that out.
But women's sports, Los Lynx, dominant. Whitecaps, pretty good. Frost, pretty good. Walter Cup champs, Isabel Cup champs.
Leaving the men in the dust, Viggs.
In the dust. Go for women's hockey. They've done pretty well over the years with titles, though not lately.
Yeah, but
that's what I hear.
The WCHA dominance, though, is still ridiculous, Todd. I mean,
it
Duluth hasn't been up there in a while, but it's still those 4 schools, utter dominance in college hockey.
Almost to a unfortunate degree. I think of like we've been talking about this at Badgers games is like, Minnesota State comes to town.
So what?
Not a lot of interest because what the results are going to be. And so there's really, 4 big home games a year for Wisconsin, 2 against Minnesota, 2 against Ohio State. And, sometimes Duluth. And then, you get a NCAA quarterfinal game. So really 5 games that are competitive.
Yeah.
And that's tough. I mean, it's tough to get people interested in that over, like I was saying before, over a long season when you can kind of tell what the results are going to be for most of the games before they're even played. That's not a great, and it goes back to the resources put into them. I mean, by the schools, there are really a handful of schools that put the resources in to be able to compete for championships. And that's in a time when women's sports are booming, volleyball, basketball, hockey isn't there because it is not getting the same amount of commitment. And
it's kind of like USA basketball for all those years in the Olympics.
Yeah.
It's just not competitive.
Right.
I mean, you've really right now it's Ohio State and Wisconsin.
And
Minnesota's a little below, but
even when you had a Clarkson win a couple of times, nobody else from the ECAC followed.
Mhm.
You know, if Northeastern got into the championship game out of Hockey East. That was as far as they've gotten. Yeah, it's a lot of. I hope it's something that can change with more depth of players, the player pool becoming bigger, girls hockey growing 20 years from now means there's more quality players that can be spread out among teams.
I hope so, because right now still all the good players are all going to the
Yep.
same 2 and 3 and 4 schools.
Yep.
I mean, in the past, it was more of an incentive to go out east because you know what? A lot of these girls want to go to these Ivy League schools and play and get that education because especially, when it kind of all started back in the 90s and early 2000s, it's like, I'm not going very far with this except maybe Olympics if I'm elite, but I can get an elite education, at Brown or like Harvard, whatever it may be. But now a lot of these girls like, I kind of do have a future now after college hockey. It's, you got the pro league, you've got, obviously Team USA. So they're all kind of ganging up on just a couple schools.
Yeah. And you need more Big Ten schools to
True.
dip into the pool
I think
too.
that would help. If you can get the Michigan schools in there, I think that could help a ton. Just a ton.
Some of them, right? I mean, it's not for a lack of interest. I know that much. It's a lack of want to, or a lack of follow through by administration in a lot of ways, which I understand. This is a tough time to be adding anything in college sports. It's a lot easier right now to go the other way. So that adds to the challenge, I guess.
Speaking of how challenging it is to add things in college athletics, Todd, you and I are a little bit financial geeks with our schools and covering them and digging into the numbers. I know that Mark Coyle presented his budget with a projected deficit significantly larger than he's ever presented to the regions than ever before. It was just like 3 or 4 million a little bit ago, and now it's like 9-10. What's the picture looking like at Wisconsin?
So it's always a bit of a hard thing to get a real grasp on because they present their budget to the athletic board in April, March, somewhere around then. February, probably closer to February, I guess. But it's always balanced. It's always within the revenues and expenses are always within $10,000. But it's because any shortfall, the way that they operate is all of their donations go to the UW Foundation, separate, nonprofit entity, billions of dollars there. And they draw over only as much as they need to balance their budget every year. So it always looks like their budget's balanced, but there's a little bit of the shell game going on of like, okay, we're covering this shortfall with this. And
but you can look at the expenses and you can look at the revenues of ticket sales. And those are pretty powerful indicators of the health of the program, I think.
Yeah. And they've done all in all pretty well on ticket sales. No major losses yet. I mean, they were down 10% in season tickets for football this year. So that's going to.
I remember seeing some of your tweets that they've had crowds that haven't happened in decades.
That Ohio State crowd was not good.
No, it wasn't. And it was like I was down there when the first half hour after the gates opened, and it was just like it felt like 60% Ohio State fans coming in early. And always, I was talking to people. I was like, yeah, the visiting fans usually are the ones that show up early because they're checking it out or their parents or whatever. But it was it's got to be eye opening for a lot of people over there of what's the answer, what's the path out of this. I mean, there's so many things tied into it of, the on-field performance, but also, is it worth going to a game anymore when it's a lot easier, a lot cheaper, you have a better view at home. You don't have to park a mile and a half away and walk, especially, I mean, for an aging fan base, it is not comfortable at the stadium. You're sitting on a metal bleacher. You're cramped, you're squeezed in there. The row in front of you, your knees are in their back, or then someone else's knees are in your back. There's a long-term play of, you've got to start looking at the future of that stadium as being fewer seats, all seated, and just a massive renovation, because it's not the kind of place people want to go as you age. And those are people that are actually spending money, because younger people are just going to watch it on TV or or not watch it all. That's what the demographics say. But I think there's got to be a lot of worry about that, those numbers dropping the way that they have.
I'm super curious to see how well Minnesota does at converting their students into season ticket holders, because the last, post-COVID 4 years, the students have shown up at a lot of venues for Minnesota athletics and just changed the atmosphere. And they've seen some good football teams. They've seen some good hockey teams, and converting those graduates into season ticket holders, I think, is crucial to maintain a fan base in Minnesota and have an experience. Like, I was at the Nebraska Gopher football game when the hockey team was up in Grand Forks, and it was loud. It was a loud building. I think it made a difference in the game. Players talk about it. PJ Fleck talks about it. When the Gopher hockey team has been humming in the second half of the year when the building's packed, it's just a different atmosphere driven by the students and those young people. So I think that's critical for any team to do that.
I remember, this is probably going back more than a decade now, and I don't know if they still do this, or if not, when it stopped, but men's hockey here had a plan or a program for newly graduated former students, where you could buy men's hockey season tickets for a price not somewhere in the middle between the student price and the adult price. And it felt like that got some people in and connected some of that aging out group to student aging out to general public seats. And just
I like
a reason to be there.
I almost feel like you need to have a section of the arena for like young grads. So you're not quite students anymore. You're not going to be crazies, but you're close. So you get your own section of like 20 somethings, and then maybe, you can filter in the rest of the arena after you've learned your manners for a few years. But maybe you don't do the opposing Gophers team chance. Yeah.
It's the whole stadium was doing it in Grand Forks.
Well, it was funny. The players are just like, they threw a dead gopher on the ice. I forgot that they did that.
Yeah.
That was a pretty funny
defrosted dead gophers, by the way. They were not frozen.
Defrosted. Okay. I noticed they had to scrape them off the ice a little bit.
Yeah, they did have to scrape them off the ice.
Yeah. I think it was Luke Middlestad who said that. He's like, I can't believe they did that. I don't remember that was a thing, but there they were on the ice.
Max here. I met him last weekend at Mariucci. Thoughts
Thanks
on
for
St.
saying
Thomas?
hi, Max.
Yes.
Yep.
Thanks for St. Thomas saying to put their media at the end of the rink. Press box at the end of the rink. That is kind of odd.
It is and it isn't. There are a lot of places out east that have do that.
Okay.
Pretty regularly. I mean, I think they're older buildings, but Yeah, I don't love it, but I would rather, I guess, be in a corner if you're gonna kind of choose your spot that's not directly along the side, which is, I would think, the preferred viewpoint. But I actually, as a fan, I like sitting on the end. I like
Okay.
seeing the game come, go
North,
this
south.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when you're trying to catch numbers and see the little details when they're happening on the other end of the rink, that's tougher. I mean, that's been the setup for women's games at Ritter for a long time when they have, large
Yeah.
media contingents, Frozen Fours or
Yeah.
final face-offs. And it's, I was just glad that Wisconsin scored the OT winner on the end that we were at last year, because for video purposes, that was all right in front of us. So,
Yeah, when Beast
like-
and I were there for the summer showcase, you got to be careful up there because some pucks were flying with the junior teams, the men out there. I'm like, be careful, you could get nailed back there. Beast.
Yeah, Jess Myers almost got hit because he was typing away, and my laptop almost took a hit. But like Sioux Falls was like that too for the regional,
in the corner. Yep.
in the corner. So that was kind of tricky covering that weekend, making the trip there and then having a tough look down the ice. Makes it challenging. I don't mind being high up like at Excel, like you're way up there, but you can at least see everything pretty well for numbers and all that. So interesting choice.
I'm curious, Todd. I actually had a little discussion with Schloss on this. Can you still go to hockey games as not a reporter and still enjoy the games? Is it tougher? Are you still thinking about, I might have to write something, or can you get out of that writer mode? Interesting, because he's like, sometimes he even feels anxious if he does go to like a game because he's, I might have to write something, or gosh, what if I show emotion at a USHL game and somebody thinks I'm cheering for a specific team? For one thing, do you get the games as much as fans anymore? And can you enjoy them?
Yeah, I was just trying to think when the last time I was there is, not actually working at a game. It's been a while. Like, I can't think of when it was. I remember going to a Wild game when the Badgers were playing up there. So we were there on a Thursday night and went to a game there, but that's maybe 6-7 years ago now. So, it is weird trying to like separate out you're just here to enjoy this rather than you're here to like take everything in, like don't miss something. So I had to cover the Brewers in the postseason a couple of times, and like I'm a pretty big Brewer fan, so I had to kind of drop out of that for the postseason, which is tough, but be professional, do all that kind of stuff. But that was weird. Trying to balance that, and so I don't know if that's the same thing or not, but it's, I guess it was.
It's got to be tougher because you probably think when you were younger, boy, you used to love to go to these games and maybe yell at the refs, stuff like that. It's like, well, you know what I mean? I mean, if you wouldn't have become a journalist, you'd probably still be doing things like that. And
we used to go to Milwaukee Admirals games all the time when I was a kid, and we were yelling at the ref all the time. And then they made the PA announcement that we want to welcome the referee's mom, and she was sitting right behind us.
Oh,
it's like, we're gonna just shut up now.
Oh dear.
That was a good lesson, I guess. Early in life.
What do you do?
Watch your mouth.
You did
But
stay
yeah.
up last night to the baseball game, though, didn't you? Did you enjoy staying up till 2 a.m. almost?
There were a lot of I questioned my decisions a lot as that game was going on. You know what? I did go to an Admirals game in the postseason last year. I don't even remember that. And that was, yeah, I could not separate out the fact that I'm
There you
paying
go.
attention to who's on whose line and how that's changing. And nope, it was still going that way.
Vigs, I know you still go to occasional games. I know your kids do, and you're obviously the Don Vigo does. Do you still try? I mean, obviously being a Gopher football season ticket holder, that probably helps.
Yeah, I think watching like Gopher hockey, I'm a little more reserved because of how we interact with the coaches and the players and follow the team and talk about this way. So it's a little more step back. I no longer rube on all the stuff like when we went to Houghton many years ago and had great times winning the 50-50 raffle at the arena and then putting it back in the local economy in Hancock afterwards and having a great time. Those days are past. But I still enjoy going to the games with my kids and watching it from that perspective as a dad and, watching games with my dad here and there. As a father-son, I can still enjoy that part of it and Gopher football. I can be a fan. I'm not covering Gopher football, so I can enjoy it. And, I've got kind of the coaching background too. So I'm always looking at the game from that perspective of what's happening out there. Not so much from the journalist standpoint, but just the fan. I'm definitely one of those people who don't like to yell at the coaches or criticize calls or yell at the refs. Like that's just not why I go to games. So I can still have a good time. It's just a little harder with the Gopher hockey team because of how we do this. And, I think it's a fair trade.
I got a question. Why don't more teams do 50-50 raffles and with the proceeds going to NIL like North Dakota has done?
Funny enough, Eric Brever, Sky UM Law on GPL has said that there are some legal issues with how you do that. And there's different laws per each state on how the gambling and the charitable donation, not all NIL groups are charitable,
right?
Which 50-50s have to go to. So it gets a little complicated from that standpoint. The Wild do their 50-50 and it goes to a charitable organization.
Right.
I don't know how North Dakota does it. I don't think it can go right to their collective. I think it's got to go some other route to get to the players. So I don't know the X's and O's of how they do that. But I think, you go to a lot of like D3 games that do 50-50s. I think it's just they have a charitable donation booster club
right
that gets the money that way. So it does happen. It's just interesting that they don't do it so much at University of Minnesota athletics, at least, and apparently not at Wisconsin.
Thought the same for Wisconsin. Yeah, it seems like that would be, fan friendly kind of engagement.
Yep,
Gosh,
I agree.
It was over 50 grand up in Grand Forks on Saturday. I want to say when I was up there.
Yeah, I mean, I think some Wild playoff games it gets to 100,000. So definitely, I think something that the school should look at. I remember John King was saying he wishes that the Wild could do pull tabs at the arena.
Of course, he'd love that.
I think that meat raffles and pull tabs at Minnesota sporting events is definitely something. You go to a game, you go home with a box of steaks, or maybe you get some pull tabs and you can buy your row a bunch of parlor burgers or something. I don't know. Makes a lot of sense to me.
Just to finish up the last topic, about a month or so ago, my daughter asked me, she's expecting her second child in January. And she says to me, Dad, I want to get to a hockey game before I get too big. In her pregnancy, because obviously it's more comfortable when you're not.
Right.
So her and I are going to the November 7th game against Notre Dame. We're taking Craig Floor's seats. I saw him commenting here about some things earlier. We're using his seats. And I'll be able to be a fan, but I think I'm kind of like you, V's. You know, I'll cheer and whatnot, but probably some reservations in there. But similar to you, it's like I'm still doing that daddy-daughter thing that we've experienced since she was just a little tyke, you know, younger than your kids. And she got her first puck at a game, you know, and whatnot. And literally like 20 years ago, she got a picture with Frank Mazzocco and she's holding the puck. She was so happy about that. And we recreated that photo about 2 years ago when we went to another game. And she was just so thrilled to recreate that photo of her all grown up and Frank much older as well. So the family thing does help, Figs. I mean, when you bring some old family, it allows you to at least sit in the stands and enjoy it and enjoy the whole thing.
Yep. Like I took my kids to skate with the Gophers.
Oh yeah.
And my son was just like, Dad, Sammy Walker, he is so fast. And I'm just like, yes, he is. Yes, he's very fast. He should be a right wing.
And he shouldn't be hitting balls at me on
18 at Les Bolstad. So. Pretty funny.
So Vigs, what's this about a missed call? What's this missed call you had while you were coaching? What is the deal with that?
I thought this was about the regional game last year again. I was like,
there's been a lot of missed calls involving the caller on this one. He just likes to call people out for missing calls. You know, officials, reporters, people. So So after availability on Tuesday, a little contentious one. I see some people in our chat talking about contentious things going on with the program. I don't know if that was about that or not, but I was just about to hit the ice with my Pee Wee team for practice. And I have this habit right now. I have an Apple Watch. And when I'm coaching, my glove gets sweaty. And so my watch will start like 3-minute timers, 2-minute timers. And I have to keep muting it. And just be like, would that timer just stop going? And apparently Bob Motzko called me at this time, and I just hung up on him right away. And he didn't leave a message or anything because I think I hung up on him or something. And so at availability this week, he walks in there, and it's just me and Wally and the WCCO camera guy. And he goes like, Viggs, am I not an important guy? You just going to blow me off when I call you? And I go, totally don't remember that. And I look back at my call list after availability. And it's like, oh yeah, what was I doing at that time? Oh, I was at hockey and my watch was acting up and I just missed it. And
he had a big secret for you that he was going to tell you, but now he just doesn't want to tell you. Who knows what it was about? It's
probably why they got swept by UMD. Bob was so distracted by me blowing him off. It's too bad. So Maybe someday Bob will let me know what was so important that I missed the scoop on. So, yep, embarrassing for me. I'll have to change my best. But I think it speaks a little bit to my crazy life right now, trying to coach my daughter's team, my son's team, and do this and work and do all my other things that I do. So
be a husband.
Be a husband. I made a really nice chicken wild rice soup today. I've got some beef pot roast that's going in tomorrow.
Oh, you jerk. Don't be teasing us with that.
Trying to get my last round in at Les Bolstad before the university tries to sell it, or maybe not. We'll see. Have you heard about this, Todd?
I did, from seeing your social media on that.
Yeah, President Cunningham wants to solve her budget by selling the golf course, which I don't think is going to have a bunch of a buyer. So it's a very confusing thing. I think someone convinced her that she could get a lot of money for this property, and I just don't think it's realistic based on what I've heard. So it would be a shame because I spend a lot of my time between baseball season and hockey season at this property trying to work on my golf game. So that if I ever get the invite to play with Nick Angel at his course, I can have a good showing. So,
you watching, Nick? You gonna respond to that?
No, I had a good year. I broke 80 like 3 or 4 times. I got my handicap down to an 11. Game was coming around. Didn't win my shootout. Didn't have as much tournament success this year, but I felt good about my game. So
Well,
one more round in this week, hopefully.
This weekend, maybe.
Probably not this weekend. There's a lot of hockey on the calendar this weekend. So,
someday there's not going to be a lot of hockey on your calendar,
I know that,
and you'll miss it. You'll miss the coaching. Maybe not the schedule, but you'll miss the whole thing.
I was talking with my wife about this tonight. It's like, we signed up for this. I'm excited to support my kids as they go through this stage of their life, and I'm happy I get to coach them. And I don't know, my son's going to be a Bantam next year. Who knows? I might not be coaching him next year. This might be my last hurrah behind the bench for him, at least. I think I get my daughter for another 3 years at least. So
they all grow up.
Yeah, then they have kids. Then they have kids, and you become a grandpa.
Yeah. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with being a younger grandfather too. Just means I get to spend more time.
By the way, back to the hockey. I feel like we left Todd off the hook a little bit with deep diving questions on the Badgers team this year.
Really?
What do you want to know?
I want to know what's their strength and what Hastings is trying to express as his message. So I think I expressed the strength of the Gophers as the D are getting better. They're starting to break out the puck a little bit more. They just don't have a lot of offense.
Mm-hmm.
They've got returning players who are inconsistent and aren't really taking the reins yet. And he's worried about that. And he's worried about effort. So I think those are the things with Minnesota, those big storylines. Strangely enough, goaltending's actually been pretty good for the Gophers. I think some people were concerned about, but it looked really good. Both goalies look good to me.
Yeah, that first goal on Friday night, though.
I feel like it ramped off a stick a little bit. You couldn't see a very good replay on it, but he shot through the defender, and I just think he didn't see it. That happens. It might have got tipped a little bit.
So with Wisconsin, a couple things of they needed to be a lot better down the middle. They were piecing things together last season and some of Hastings' first season, just trying to get the right people there. Guys that can keep the puck, help keep the puck in the offensive zone for 45 seconds and, have the puck more than they don't. And that was really missing last year when David Celia signed. Christian Fitzgerald is a winger. They had to play him at center the last 2 years because they didn't have anyone better. And now they've got him on the wall. So they have 3 freshmen and a sophomore playing center right now. And honestly, it looks pretty good. Oliver Tulk, kid from Calgary in the Western League, just doesn't look phased by anything. I think that's one of the things we're going to see about a lot of these CHL players is they've seen a lot. Like they've played a lot, they've seen a lot, they've seen some really good players. And so I don't know that a lot is really affecting them as much as freshmen out of the USHL or wherever, BCHL, anything. Goalie had to be good, and that was a big we don't know. But again, Daniel Hauser, Calgary, Western League, won more games than anyone has ever won in the Western League. So he's 20, comes in as a 21-year-old freshman, and I hate defaulting. Well, the goaltending's got to be good. Yeah, of course it does. But it's like you just look at the last 2 years with Kyle McClellan. They caught lightning in a bottle. He had a great year. It was the right situation. He got a great start. It all kind of worked the right direction. Last year, Tommy Scarfoni never got going. Never had a good foundation. Lost the first game to Lindenwood. Just didn't get goal support. That didn't help. But Hauser so far has been pretty good. But I do wonder about the quality of the shooters he's faced with the teams that they played. So let's see getting in the Big Ten games, especially these next couple of weeks. And I mean, so, Hastings wants to play puck possession. So if they're going well, they're getting 65% of shot attempts. And that's what we've seen so far. So that's kind of the formula. I think he would say he's got more of the kind of team that he would want to have player-wise than last year for sure, and probably his first year, even though he brought in a lot of those guys from Mankato his first year. And so Simon Tassie's been pretty good so far. I think you mentioned at Viggs. He's healthy. He was never healthy last year.
Okay.
And you can just see that he's able to do a lot more physically around the net. And that's his game. It's just, be the body around the front, create traffic, cause issues, make them, pay attention to the wrong thing as defenders. He's doing that a lot better than he ever did last year. And I'm almost sure it's all because of just being healthy. But yeah, they still need more guys to score. They're getting a little bit of it, but they can't be just Quinn Finley and a few other guys scoring. I mean, Finley scored 20 last year, but that was it. I mean, that was really the only dependable scoring they had. And he misses an empty net in game 2 against Ohio State. They lose in overtime. They lose the next day. Season's over. It's like, that was like, can you imagine how hard that is to come back from when you have
all summer to think about it?
Yeah. I don't think anyone had any thoughts that they were going far as a team. But
I think we were in the press box watching that game when it happened.
Yes.
You would have had another week and, see what happens. And man, but Finley's looking pretty good. He wanted more responsibility. He's on the PK this year. I think he's getting better. I don't know if you saw the goal that Blake Montgomery scored last week, freshman, just turned on the Jets in the middle of the ice and 4 guys around him, in a penalty kill kind of shape. He just goes right through the middle of them to the net and scores. And it was like, they need more of that. More guys that are just aggressive and getting them to that and taking those opportunities. So, I mean, we'll see. They're gonna win some. They're gonna lose a few. This week and next week we're kind of like the big okay, here's where we're gonna know: Minnesota and Michigan. I mean, because if you can skate with Michigan next week,
Michigan
skate with
really
anyone.
Good.
Yeah,
Michigan looks really good.
I always wonder about the goaltending, and that's looking pretty good too. So.
It is looking good. What are you pouring there, Viggs?
I got something. Todd is a good thing to come out of Wisconsin, and I've got a little New Glarus Moon Man here.
All right,
Moon Man.
very nice.
So Some good things do come out of Wisconsin.
Viggs, how concerned are you about special teams right now for Minnesota?
I'm not.
2 for 21 on the
concerned.
power play so far, 9.5%.
Leo's would have been. It's like a second after.
Yeah, it was, but and only was 72.7% kill right now.
Yeah, I really like the way their top unit looks with Ludke, Lamb, Zemer, Middlestat, and Mooney. Like I think that's a great group. Like they look dangerous. So I'm not super concerned right now. I'm more concerned with Minnesota's a really good team if they can get to the red line with speed. They are a terrible team if they can barely get over the blue line. You know what I mean? So just getting that consistency so they can get some speed so they can get in on their forecheck, because so many times right now, like they're kind of coming through the neutral zone disjointed. We're at the end of a shift and they're not confident enough to get on their forecheck. And I think the way this team has to play this year, they're going to have to change that.
I think
they need more from Javon Moore. They need more from Brody Lamb. They need more from Brody Zemer. Like some of their best forwards right now are Mooney, Mo, Hendrickson. Like that, those might be their three most consistent. Middlestat, like he's not providing a lot of offense, but he's winning shifts. Like those are probably not the four forwards you'd be expecting at the start of the year to be your best players. They need more from Lamb, Clark, Zemer, Paulson.
And I looked to a year ago when they were in Duluth and how much Duluth could not handle their forecheck the entire weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just the exact opposite this past weekend. They couldn't do anything on their forecheck.
Yeah. It's a big question mark for them right now. I don't think you can blame the young D after this last weekend because they got better. So
Rombach's a +4.
Yeah.
How is he a +4?
The message board does not like Rombach.
I can't believe it. Everyone's like, oh, Rombach's terrible. I'm like, I look at his number and like he's +4, the top defenseman in a +- and then people are like, oh, well, +- doesn't mean anything. I'm like, well, he's on the ice for goals and he's off the ice for goals against. I mean,
I think the biggest thing for him is his size and reach just shows up in the defensive zone. Like it's hard to get good scoring chances against him. He looks a little awkward doing it sometimes, but he still gets the job done.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think he looks the smoothest out there, but what do you expect? He's kind of a toolsy, big defenseman. He'll get there, I think. But this is such a development team right now. That's why, I mean, if they get points this weekend, it's a big turnaround because I'm not expecting it right now.
Yeah, and then you look in the opposite. You got to Finn McLaughlin. I keep saying McLaughlin.
Yeah.
-7 right now.
Struggling a little bit. Well, I think with him, he's maybe trying to do too much with the puck. He's kind of a puck moving guy.
Yeah.
And he's just getting himself into trouble. So
maybe Denver wasn't all that far off. Yeah, that might be because I don't know why some people are so against him. I'm like, oh, that's a terrible stat. I'm like,
well, he's also kind of from a different background. He's not from a hockey hotbed, so he's kind of a late bloomer too. So, sometimes you have a bias in your perception on somebody. If they played at Shattuck or the development team, you just kind of have this feeling of like that's their path. You have a guy from Spring Lake Park who went to Lincoln and you've never really seen him, and he didn't play in the state high school hockey tournament, and he wasn't a young prodigy. Like you just kind of a bias maybe. So
you noticed a difference in the players that we saw at the junior showcase and now that they're under the wing in Minnesota? I seem that they remember they're pretty wide open when you were interviewing them. They seem a little more reserved at Minnesota now.
Yeah, I think the eyes are on a little bit more. And then, the start of the season. Like,
true. Yeah.
losing games, no one feels good when they lose, and they like players say they don't watch the social media stuff. They feel it. They know people aren't happy. They see the comments. They've got receipts, I'm sure.
I'm sure they do. We'll see.
They might even try to hit me with a golf ball if they see me at the golf course.
You weren't wrong, Viggs. You were not wrong. What do you do? Anything else, guys?
How are the Badgers doing in recruiting, Todd?
They're hitting the familiar paths. Older guys that have been or will be older when they think they're going to get them. What I had heard is they really wanted what's his name? Gutierrez, defenseman.
Shattuck
name.
Development.
Yeah. But other than that, I think they've hit on a lot of their targets. Just had a goalie commit from the program. I mean, I guess it's. I'm still waiting to see like how the CHL thing changes them, because it felt like they could be real winners in that situation if they get in good with the take the CHL players when they're aging out, because that gets them in a little better graces with the CHL coaches, staffs. Not the, we're taking your guy when he's still got a year of eligibility sort of route. Although they have to do that sometimes too. It's not feasible just to get all overagers unless, that's a strategy you really have to commit to. But I got to give someone some time and see what it turns out to be, because that was my first thought, is like, whoa, this could be right up their alley, given history. But they've still been getting a few guys, from the program and dipping into that water too. So I think people were putting out there for a long time that there's never going to be a first round pick here again. Well, yeah, there is. It's just it may not be a team with 5 of them, but that team finished in last in the Big Ten. So
I don't think you can win with a team of 5 first round picks. Like, if your program just has those guys flowing through and leaving early, that's just not long-term success. That's not cultural sustainability. Also the portal. I don't think you can live in the portal. I think Brad Berry kind of found that out at North Dakota. I wonder if Bryn Chiswick and Dane Jackson are going to struggle with that at North Dakota if they keep going with these young CHL players. Maybe they just did it because they had to fill their roster somehow this year. But I wonder if Bryn Chiswick is being escorted out of some CHL arenas this year, or if he's got some people on his side.
Yeah,
because that's been crazy news to hear that some teams don't want college staff in their building.
I mean, they see him as a threat, right? So I think there's a lot of goes on both sides, right? So,
well, especially if you get players, some of these superstars, or even some players are like, oh my gosh, if they're talking to their friends back home, which we know they're doing, these arenas are huge. They're filled with people. We're flying to destinations, not busing all over Canada. We've kind of talked about this, Viggs. Word's going to get back.
Yeah, you'd think so. Minnesota, they've got players who are committed who are now going to CHL to play, but I think Bob's been kind of hesitant to dip his toes in there. He's got the ties to USA Hockey. He's the World Junior coach this year. mean, they could have benefited from one or two players instead of other ways they decided to go. They had room on their roster if they wanted to. They just kind of made the conscious decision not to.
And he could ultimately pay for that too. If it's a terrible season, sub 500, people are going to say, why are you bringing in this Harris guy who's D3 and you could have gone up and gotten a Canadian who's way better.
But that Canadian might have just played a year or two and left too.
True.
Which puts you in a weird situation when, the players he's got signed in 2 years, probably the top class in the country, when they're bringing in all those top players who just committed this last month or 2 months. And Fitzhenry is probably going to be the next one to fall in that class. Sounds like he could be a strong Minnesota lean. That looks like a pretty good group coming in.
It does, but that's where the criticism will be. And it'll.
Well, that's where it already is right now.
I mean,
with the 2-5-1 start, people are questioning it right now.
And that's kind of what I was going at. Would the worst thing ever if Penn State wins a national championship after buying McKenna?
There's a real interesting alternate reality for this season of,
oh yeah,
if there are no CHL players on rosters this year. Penn State looks an awful lot different, and yeah, I don't know.
It's going to be interesting. I think, Penn State's going to start playing a lot tougher teams now as well. We'll see how they do.
And McKenna only has 10 points in 8 games. So it's not like he is taking over college hockey. I think he's struggling a little bit.
And we didn't really anticipate that. We thought he might, feed off of some of those lowly teams, Viggs, and might boost his points early in the season.
Yeah. Like I did not think we were going to see a celebrating Fantilli type season out of McKenna. And I think we're just seeing that college hockey is a tough league, especially if you're a smaller player.
And it's older too. So it's
it is people get more and more film on Penn State. It's not going to get a lot easier for them. So I'm excited to see Penn State play Michigan and Michigan State. I think those will be interesting games to watch. A lot of talent on those.
It's good to have
rosters.
Good to have BTN plus, Viggs. It's good to have that.
Big Ten looks pretty good this year. What do you think, Todd?
I think this is a year where the Big Ten can be kind of what the Hockey East was last year.
Yeah.
Of just, maybe the non-conference record isn't as good as it was, but I mean,
thanks to Minnesota.
it's still the best in college hockey.
It is, but yeah, but there's been a couple of those losses that are like, who's that going to hurt at the end of the season, right? Yeah, yeah, I'm like struggling to like put into like words how exciting this could be for all the people who have like held on to the notion of, the Big Ten's going to be good for college hockey. That's a pretty small group, I know, and it's dwindled.
The clock is ticking. Oh, look at that.
But
there we go.
They've got to win a championship.
They got to win a championship to shut everybody up. But one thing about the Big Ten, when I look at the finances of college hockey, all the Big Ten programs are in the top 15.
Yeah.
Like the experience of playing at a Big Ten institution for hockey is significantly different than any other program other than North Dakota, Denver,
right.
BU, BC.
And you think about the other conferences that there may be some that are in that category, but there are also some that are way different. And that's what you don't have in the Big Ten is that you don't have anyone who's just like, we're happy just to have a program. Doesn't work.
Doesn't work that way. Like Notre Dame, who's probably the 7th team in the Big Ten. Yeah. You're going to have a great experience playing for Notre Dame.
I love that rink.
It's a great rink. It's a great facility, great school, great campus, great location, great schedule, great travel, plenty of TV. You're on Peacock all the time.
Right.
It's not too shabby.
Not too shabby at all.
All right.
Should we call it, guys?
Call it.
All right. Stay on for just a second here, Todd, to make sure we get your full recording. And we'll say goodnight to everyone. We'll catch you next week.
Well, I think the reason that Bob really was trying to call me was, twofold. First, it's the recruiting commitment that because he didn't get a hold of me, he couldn't announce it. It didn't come out.